my father had hit my mother and she had fallen on the floor, and she was begging him to stop, and he was kicking her in the stomach. I remember that actually very vividly. But I remember going to school and not having lunch, not being able to afford lunch. I remember there was one time my dad had brought home something from a restaurant the night before, and I had to wrap it in like lined, kind of like college ruled paper, to bring it to school. That's how I had to bring it to school. And then I got in trouble for eating it because it was his. I was relatively lucky in the sense that I was never physically abused. I was more so verbally abused because that's just the type of person he was. He thought my mother cheated on him when she had my brother. So a lot of his anger was towards my brother and my mother. There are different types of victimization. It's incredibly important to acknowledge that. And it causes an issue, especially with victims seeking help, is that if you don't acknowledge, or if society doesn't acknowledge your victimization as victimization, then it's very unlikely that you're going to look for help. Because that's one thing I had to start realizing, was that this had impacted me in ways that I couldn't fully grasp, and I needed help seeing that.
Each crime kind of has their own little characteristics. Obviously, domestic violence, they are fearful of their offenders in most cases. Sometimes they are wanting to go back to their offenders, but usually we get them and they're afraid of them. They don't want to testify against them. One, they care about them, but at the same time they're afraid of them. So it puts them kind of in a bad situation. And I always use the example, if you're on the street and somebody picks your pocket and takes your credit card and racks up your bill, are you going to turn them in? And of course they all say yeah. Then when I ask them if their mom does it, it's a totally different story. Normally we get about even levels between male and female, but again, it's going to depend on that particular month what type of crime that we have. If we have more domestics, it tends to go higher with females. If we have more, batteries and stuff, that tends to go more male. If they've been victims of domestic violence multiple times, they start to kind of lose faith in the system. So we see a lot of people that are able to succeed and move past what happened to them. Some quite traumatizing. We've seen sexual assaults. I've got 2 girls right now that thought they would never get past it, and not only are they past it, but they're in PhD programs and working, quite successfully.
Trying to come to terms with what I experienced, and talking to my mother about it, and my brother, and I think we're similar in that sense, is that we do need, and I have needed, to see the positive in it. So it's given me a passion, it's given me a life direction, and some people would say, how can you possibly do that? And it's because ultimately at the end of the day, I really just do not want people to experience this. I think it's been really instrumental moving forward in this research to have experienced it. Not that you need to study this at all by any means, but I think it's definitely been informative, and me and my mother can have conversations about it, and then I can turn that into, well, okay, wait, is this an actual issue that most victims face? Like, do most victims face issues with the police and reporting it? And in most cases, yes. And then are there issues with resources that are available to domestic violence victims? And in most cases, yes, there are. So it's definitely, I can see the positive in a very dark situation. You can't fix a problem after it's been ingrained in somebody. But if you teach a child that, they can hug anybody they want, they can touch anybody they want, if you like somebody, you pick on them. All these issues with gender, we can't change that after they've been on the earth for 18 to 20 years. Like, that's just not a thing that we can do. And that's the thing. It's very difficult to come up with a solution to a centuries old, thousands of years, I'm sure, problem that we're just now realizing is an issue.